It was a scorcher in the village of Injuba when Zena first spotted the small ivory-colored dog crouched beside the clay bakery wall, panting heavily and trembling like a leaf in the wind. No collar, no charm. Only a muddy paw and eyes that seemed far too human to belong to any animal. People bustled by, vendors shouting, children chasing tire rims, but no one paused. Only Zena noticed the dog's silence, the way it sat like it was waiting for someone who never came. She knelt without thinking, stretching out her hand. The dog, fragile as dusklight, crept into her lap as if it had been waiting just for her. Zena glanced around, expecting someone to rush forward and claim it, but the street went on, alive and uncaring. Her shift at the dyeing shed started in half an hour, but she couldn't just leave the creature there. Scooping it up, she whispered, "Let's find you some shade, eh?" The dog licked her chin gently, then nestled its head on her shoulder. Zena couldn't help but smile. She had no idea the little soul, now nestled in her arms, belonged to a man whose name shone in glossy city lights. A man who lived beyond her reach, in a world so different it might as well have been carved from cloud far across the hills, hidden behind tall hedges and glass. Jabari stood in his vast sunlit kitchen, staring into an untouched silver bowl on the marble floor. The silence in his mansion stretched long and cold, broken only by the creak of the ceiling fan. He reached for his phone, paused, then set it down again. "She'll find her way home," he murmured, but his voice betrayed him. He didn't believe it. The mansion, regal and polished, reflected everything he had built: prestige, power, control, but none of it could give him what he truly needed. The only one who listened, without judgment or demand, was his Maltese terrier, Chica, who had vanished that morning from the courtyard. No gates were open. No footage caught her leaving. He'd driven the roads in his armored cruiser. Nothing. Now he stood behind walls of steel and silence, whispering into the empty air. "Where are you, girl?" Back in the village center, Zena peered from behind the counter at Muffin, the name she'd given the dog, who lay curled on a pile of folded linens. A man in a business tunic dropped off a basket of clothes and nodded at the pup. "Good eyes," he said with a grin. Zena returned a half smile. She hadn't yet figured out where Muffin came from, but the dog had been so gentle, so loyal, that she'd already begun thinking of her as her own dot in between stamping receipts and folding fabric. Zena leaned over and whispered, "Muffin." "Yeah, you look like a muffin, don't you?" The dog's tail thumped against the floor, and Zena chuckled quietly. For a few minutes, she forgot the cracked roof of her home, the way she counted every copper coin at the market, or the pitying look from the landlady. That night, she searched local notices, scrolling on a borrowed phone. And then she froze. There it was, a reward post. The same dog, the same eyes. But no name, no number. Just a single word, Jabari. And a red dot on the map, the edge of the city hills. The next day, Zena stood before tall iron gates, Muffin, Chica, cradled in her arms. The compound beyond looked carved from marble and moonlight, untouched by dust or time. She nearly turned back, but before she could step away, the gates hummed and slid open. A man in stiff uniform stepped out, eyeing her with cool suspicion. "Yes?" he asked. Zena lifted the dog. "I think she belongs here." The man's expression changed at once. "Come," he said, leading her inside, stepping into the grand estate felt like walking into a dream too delicate to touch. Glass gold, silence. She didn't even realize her breath had caught until he appeared. Jabari, barefoot, shirt loose, eyes shadowed, standing at the far end of the corridor. For a moment, everything else vanished. He walked toward them without a word, his eyes not on the dog but on Zena. Chica leapt into his arms with a soft whimper, tail spinning like a wheel. But Jabari's gaze never left the woman who had brought her home, You found her, he said, voice low. Zina nodded. She was alone. I couldn't leave her. Jabari studied her, not just her features, but the quiet strength in her posture, the way she stood like someone who wasn't used to being invited in. Your name? He asked. Zina, she replied, her voice soft. I work in the fabric house. Near the junction. He didn't thank her. Not in words. Not a word of thanks came yet, but Jabari motioned toward a cool, carved stone bench in the airy foyer. Please, sit, he said. Would you like something to drink? Zina hesitated. Everything around her gleamed, the smooth floors, the high ceilings, the glass like still water, but she nodded politely. I didn't come for any reward, she added quickly, her voice low. I just wanted to bring her back. Jabari gave a faint smile, the kind that hides more than it shows. Then let me thank you in my own way, he replied. Instead of calling the house steward, Jabari disappeared into the kitchen himself, returning moments later with 2 tall glasses of icy tango-wheezy lemonade, much to the butler's silent dismay. Zina accepted hers with both hands, careful not to look too long at the abstract painting behind him, a swirl of color that probably cost more than a year of her earnings. They sat, facing each other. Chica, the little dog who had drawn their fates together, curled beside Jabari as if she'd never vanished. He asked Zina where she found her, what she did for work, whether she lived nearby. She answered each question with honest simplicity, her eyes occasionally flitting toward the doorway, as if waiting for someone to remind her she didn't belong there. But Jabari didn't want her to leave. He was struck not just by what she said, but how she said it. No flattery, no probing questions about his wealth. Only presence. When she finally rose to go, Jabari stood too. Would you come again? He asked, a little too quickly. Chica seems to like you. Zina blinked in surprise. If you want me to. I do, he replied, his voice softening. Very much. 3 days later, she returned. No heels, no makeup, no pretense. Just Zina in a plain indigo shift dress. Jabari met her at the door himself, more at ease now, more open. They sat in the back garden, where red hibiscus danced in the wind and doves sang softly from the treetops. Chica darted between their feet, tail wagging. They talked about little things, sunrises, yam fritters, books neither had finished, but something deeper moved underneath. Jabari listened like every word she spoke mattered. Zina laughed like she hadn't in years when it was time to leave. He walked her to the gate. Next time, let me send a car, he offered. Zina smiled. Walking keeps my spirit light. Jabari watched her fade into the curve of the hill, already thinking about when she'd return. A week passed. Then it rained. Zina nearly stayed home, but Jabari had sent a note. No driver. Just hoping you still come. The garden sings in the rain. So she came, soaked from the journey but grinning. He met her at the door, holding a warm towel and wearing a look in his eyes she couldn't quite name. They sat inside, sipping spiced tea, watching droplets race down the tall windows like tiny dancers. You're different from everyone I know, Jabari said, suddenly. You're real. Zina laughed softly, unsure how to respond. But he leaned in slightly. Would you ever stay longer when you visit? Maybe dinner next time? She looked at him, rain still glistening on her cheeks. Are you asking me out, Jabari? He leaned back, the corners of his mouth lifting. I guess I am. But Jabari didn't take her to some overpriced lounge with glass menus. Instead, he invited her to the kitchen. He stirred the okra stew while Zina sliced garden onions. They moved around each other like it was the most natural thing in the world, laughing at burnt rice and spilled salt. Chica sat nearby like a watchful auntie, tail twitching. That over dinner, Jabari opened up. Not as a tycoon or magazine cover, but as a boy who once ate plain cassava chips alone, because his parents were always working. Zina listened quietly. She never asked about his fortune. That made Jabari want to share even more. Later, while cleaning up, Jabari paused, a dripping bowl in his hand. "Zina," he said, voice hesitant, "what if this you and me? What if it's something?" Her heart jumped. "I don't know," she whispered. "But I want to find out." The next few days at the fabric shop were strange. Customers whispered when Zina passed. Her supervisor gave her sideways glances, the kind that felt heavier than words. Someone had seen her climbing out of a glossy black car near the hills. Another spotted her laughing beside Jabari near the fruit stall, Chica prancing ahead. The gossip spread like wild yams in the rain. "She's seeing someone rich," someone murmured just loud enough for her to hear. Zina didn't respond. She had no answers, not yet. She didn't even know what she and Jabari were becoming. That evening, she told him. Jabari only smiled and shrugged. "Let them talk. The truth is, I haven't looked forward to anything the way I look forward to you." Zina smiled quietly. "Then I guess I'll keep coming, no matter what they say." Jabari, for the first time in years, hosted a gathering, not for board members or shareholders, but just a few close friends. Not for status, just to bring joy back into the empty house that had been quiet too long. To many, the gathering at Jabari's estate was over-the-top glass flutes, jazz under chandeliers, and guests dressed like walking art. But for Jabari, only one person truly mattered. "I want you to meet the people who actually mean something to me," he had told Zina. Gently but firmly. Zina had come in her best, a simple cream dress that brushed just past her knees, her curls tied back with a ribbon. She paused for a long breath before stepping through those enormous doors, unsure if her second-hand heels even made a sound on the polished floors. The moment she entered, heads turned. Whispers slid through the air like perfume, but Jabari had eyes only for her. When someone, a woman in red satin and too much perfume, asked who Zina was, Jabari didn't hesitate. "She's the woman who brought something back into my life," he said, loud enough for silence to follow. He didn't say it was about the dog. It wasn't, not anymore. After the guests filtered out and the lights dimmed, Jabari took Zina's hand and led her through the moonlit garden maze. Strings of fairy lights draped overhead like a canopy of stars. Chica trotted ahead, barking every time they neared a wrong turn, playing their whimsical guide. Zina laughed, brushing her fingers. Along the trimmed hedges, halfway through, Jabari stopped. "Last time," he said, turning to her, "you said you weren't sure about us." The night wrapped around them like a secret. Zina looked up. "I'm still not," she admitted. "But I feel something. And it scares me." Jabari reached for her hand. "It scares me too. But if it's real, maybe it's worth being afraid." She looked down at their hands, fingers slowly intertwining, then nodded. "Okay, let's see where it goes." But not everyone shared the magic they felt. A week later, Jabari's new driver, unfamiliar with Zina, made the mistake of refusing her at the gate. "You need an appointment," he said flatly, as if she were another curious outsider. Zina blinked. "I've been visiting for weeks." But he stood firm, unaware. 15 minutes passed before Jabari realized something was off. He stormed out barefoot, his voice slicing through the intercom like lightning. When he found Zina sitting calmly near the gate, arms folded but face unreadable, he apologized so many times she stopped counting. She didn't hold it against him. But it reminded them both. Her place in his world still wasn't official. Next time, Jabari whispered, "You'll have your own key." And just like that, something shifted. A few days later, a blogger showed up at Zina's shop with syrup slick. "Charm, so what's it like dating someone that wealthy?" she asked with a smirk. "Did he buy you anything yet?" Zina gave her a flat stare, no comment. But the woman didn't stop. That evening, an article surfaced online. "Ordinary girl, extraordinary catch. gold digger or genuine? Zena's heart dropped. The photo was grainy, taken from a distance, but the headline was clear enough to sting. Jabari was furious when he saw it. "I'll sue them. I'll have it taken down." But Zena only shook her head. "Let them talk. I'm not with you for them to understand." Jabari cupped her face. "Then let's give them something real to talk about." He received an invitation to a luxury boat gala, one of those name-dropping, press-heavy events he used to attend for appearances' sake. This time, he handed the card back to his assistant. "Not interested," he said. "I've already got better company." That evening, he and Zena sat by the fireplace, barefoot, passing a bowl of buttered popcorn and laughing over an old Nollywood comedy. Chica snoozed at their feet, twitching in her dreams. "You gave up a yacht for this?" Zena teased, nudging his knee. Jabari leaned in. "I gave up pretending, for something that finally feels real. That's worth more than all the yachts in the world." Zena looked into his eyes, the kind of eyes you trust in storms, and her chest felt warmer than any fireplace. One morning, Chica escaped through the side gate, chasing a butterfly. Panic swept over them. Zena blamed herself for not securing the latch. They scoured alleys, side streets, called her name over and over. Hours later, they found Chica sitting calmly at a bus stop, licking ice cream off a stranger's cone. The man laughed, unaware of the drama he'd just ended. Jabari and Zena both burst into tears, of relief, then laughter. Back home, Zena hugged Chica tightly. "Don't scare me like that again," she whispered. Jabari laid a hand on her shoulder. "You're not just part of her life now," he said softly. "You're part of mine too. I don't want to lose either of you." Later, walking through the open-air market, Jabari paused by a fruit stall. The heat shimmered off the cobblestones, but something in his voice turned cooler. "I've been thinking," he said. Zena raised a brow, picking up a ripe mango. "About what?" He looked at her like someone standing on the edge of something beautiful and terrifying all at once. She returned. The bag was empty, her clothes now hanging beside his. Her shoes no longer lined by the door, but tucked into the closet like they had always belonged there. Damien looked up as she re-entered the room. She didn't speak, but the look in her eyes said it all. This is home now. From that evening on, there were no more unspoken maybes. Just mornings where they shared silence over coffee and evenings, where laughter echoed between walls that had once known only echoes. They began building a rhythm, small routines that stitched their lives together. Mira started helping with Damien's outreach projects, quietly working behind the scenes. Her ideas were sharp, her words deliberate. And slowly, the mansion became a home not just for Coco and Damien, but for her too. Months passed, and then, on a golden morning as sunlight spilled through the tall windows, Damien knelt in the garden, the place they had always returned to when words felt too big, and held out a small velvet box. No crowd, no cameras. Just Coco barking once, then sitting down like she already knew. "I used to come home to silence," he said, voice thick. "Now I come home to you." Mira blinked back tears, hands trembling. "You sure you want all of this?" she whispered. "The girl with laundromat dust still on her shoes?" Damien smiled, standing slowly to take both her hands. "I didn't fall for the shoes," he said. "I fell for the soul inside them." And there, in the quiet place between what they'd been and what they would become, Mira nodded. Double quotes yes. The next morning, Mira unpacked her life, not as a visitor, but as someone who belonged. Her dresses now hung beside his. Her scent lingered on pillows once untouched. Her laughter echoed in corners that had only known silence. Coco raced through the halls like a queen, tail wagging, as if she knew the house was finally whole. On the balcony, Damien stood beside her, both of them watching the sun stretch across the hills. "I still can't believe all this started with the dog," Mira said, a quiet smile playing on her lips. Damien turned to her. kissed her forehead, and replied, "No, it started with you. You brought her home. But somehow you brought me back to life too." And just like that, the mansion wasn't cold anymore. It breathed. It bloomed. It became a home, filled with mismatched coffee mugs, muddy paw prints, and two people who found love where neither expected to. Because sometimes the softest beginnings write the strongest stories.